Buongiorno a tutti. You know that we have the interpretation. I want to thank the interpreters, Italian and English, so you have the earphones, and so maybe we can also speak in Italian. I will do my brief introduction in Italian. Grazie a tutti.
Thanks. Welcome to all of you, colleagues, assistants, staff, representatives of industry. We wanted to dedicate a session to a sector that is very important for us and at the heart of the European economy. We had in October, if I remember correctly, a session on the crisis of the European automotive sector, which then was going to be followed by a series of resolutions. And the discussion has been postponed, and even in plenary, we were supposed to be discussing the resolutions on the automotive sector, but unfortunately, in the Conference of Presidents, we did not manage to get the majority to vote on the discussion in plenary, whereas we feel that it's increasingly urgent because you know that as of December, we are in a new regime, so we were now having to calculate coefficients according to which automobile industry will be fined. So now we are already seeing some speculative maneuvering and going around loopholes. We've talked with the Commission about the strategic dialogue. Von der Leyen has pledged to the sector and Parliament that she was going to actively pursue this. So we thought the time had come to have this discussion and urgently have the European Parliament adopt a position which we hope will be as close as possible to what we've been saying for a long time, because it's really urgent to face this problem, which can no longer be postponed. But we've started on the basis of data that we've been collecting as ECR, and we've asked Polling Europe, which, as the name implies, is statistical data analysis company, and they've done an in-depth analysis on the basis of a very wide sample. So we are going to start from this, the outcome of this statistical analysis, and then we'll talk about policies. We will have the Italian industry minister, Urso, who with the Czech Republic is animating the discussion in the European Council on the automotive sector. And then we will have the ECR group, which in the transport, ENVI, and ITRE and social committee is working on the reforms and the resolution that we hope to get a vote on as soon as possible. So without further ado, let's hear the results of this research. When the minister comes with us, he will give us a state of the work on the council non-paper, and then we will give the floor to our MEP colleagues before we hear the ECR co-chairs Procaccini and Iñaki for the conclusion. So I would give Mr. Fonda from Polling Europe, the explanations. The slides are in English. The presentation might be either in English or Italian. We haven't decided yet. So let me first of all welcome all the audience that is remotely connected. Thank you. Over to you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So this poll that we carried out between November and December was aiming to try and understand how European citizens see future developments in the automotive sector, obviously in the light of the current challenges and difficulties, and also in relation to the prospects of an automobile sector dominated by electric vehicles. So the poll sampled over 5,000 European citizens distributed over the 27 member states, and so it really is representative of European public opinion because it's equally distributed in terms of geopolitical spread, gender, and age. So we tried to understand what the European citizens think are the roots of these crises in the automobile sector. The main reason was that the EU's requirements to invest primarily in electric vehicle production, according to European citizens, is the #1 obstacle for the development of the industry, 37%, followed by 29% unfair competition from China. But according to EU citizens, 25% of them, the European manufacturers are not entirely without blame. I was saying 25% of European citizens believe that there have been wrong pricing policy choices. 24% say that industry choices were wrong, and 22% believe that the European industry is still unable to keep on a par with Chinese and American manufacturers. So you can see it more in detail. So we've made a detailed analysis on the 4 main producers as well as large regions, Southern Europe and Northern Europe. So as regards the Chinese unfair competition, well, this is an argument that is very strong in France, a lot less in Italy, for example, whereas in the EU and in Germany, the #1 culprit seems to be wrong industry choices. Wrong industry choice on the part of European manufacturers. So Germans are particularly critical of European manufacturers. And here we focused on electric vehicles, electric cars. And this is a perception of the polluting, how polluting they are, considering the entire life cycle. So batteries, getting rid of them. So only 30% of Europeans believe that electric vehicles are less pollutant than regular vehicles. And there's a 14% who believe they're actually much more polluting. Now, there aren't any huge territorial variants. More or less, everybody thinks that electric vehicles pollute just as much as regular engines. In the south of Europe, slightly more, but we're still below 50%. Another of the factors that contributes to the doubts of electric vehicles' efficiency is that citizens don't believe that the EU will be able to develop an electricity production that can actually support this fleet of electric vehicles by 2035. Quite a wide majority thinks that we will not be able to have enough renewable energy in Europe to power electric cars, should these be the only cars allowed on our roads. So following on from this point, we asked the panel, the sample, what's the best type of cars they would see. So there's hybrid, 34% is the most popular solution. In second place, electric, 31%, followed closely by hydrogen, 30%, and then 24% biofuels. Obviously, petrol and diesel are lower. So Europeans don't want to go back to diesel and petrol-powered engines, but they also do not want to exclusively focus on electric cars. They would like a wider range of engine types. Now, if we go down to territory, the Spaniards really would like to have hybrids most of all. And for electric cars, Northern Europe is more focused on them, also because they already have the infrastructure, so 36%. Germany has a net preference for hydrogen, whereas in France, they tend to favor biofuels as alternative fuel sources. And then we talked about the ban on thermal engines. We've been talking about this for a long time, and 70% of Europeans already knows about this debate. Most of European public opinion is rather critical. 58% in one way or another is against this ban. 27% because electric cars are not, that cannot be the only ones on the roads because they cost too much to have to shorter range, etc. Another 20% believes that although we need to decrease the pollution, somehow we must take into account various kinds of engines, not just the electric ones. And then others are talking about Chinese competition, and 34% look favorably on the ban, although half again of these don't like 2035 as a deadline because they think it's too soon. Now, on this, the French are the most critical on these points as well. And lastly, we asked how many citizens would favor a revision of the legislation. Well, 70% of respondents said they would like to tweak or change the regulation. 39% because we need to focus on different technologies to reduce pollution. 31% because the timing is too tight. Now, we also have the disaggregated data. In countries where the push to review the regulation is definitely the majority view throughout the countries. So these are very briefly the data which shows that European citizens are aware that we must do something to reduce polluting emissions. But at the same time, they believe that what the EU has taken as a solution is not really a viable solution, and so they are quite worried about the consequences of this regulation on the market that somehow they need to access, and they're afraid that they, as usual, will end up paying for it.
Grazie al dottorato.
Thank you, Fonda, for this presentation and the important work done by Polling Europe. And this is a new thing that we have a demographic sample throughout the EU. It's not just a series of national samples. This will help us with strategic choices. Let's welcome Minister Adolfo Urso. He's the minister in charge of enterprises made in Italy in the Meloni government. He's here in Brussels because he's meeting with the commissioners that have to do with his portfolio. But he wanted to come in and talk about a report that he has developed with the Italian government and others. That has resulted in a non-paper on the crisis of the automotive industry. So the floor is to the minister. Well, let me start by thanking Carlo Fidanza and Nicola Procaccini, the ECR group, for having invited me in this important meeting where we're discussing the core of the competitiveness and sustainability of the social and industrial European model faced with the great challenges we have before us. This morning, I've talked to 4 of the European commissioners to illustrate the position of our government on some central issues that will also be the focus of the new Commission and the European institutions' papers. Next week in Brussels, I will meet with a further 4 commissioners, and then I will join the European Council, where I will meet again with Séjourné, with whom I met last week in Milan. So 9 different commissioners who, in one way or another, have influence on in European industrial policy, from defense, space, transport, environment, cohesion, new technologies, AI, quantum, and these strategic choices that Europe must decide upon. And I'm glad to be here with these results from this demoscopic survey. Now, I studied sociology, so I believe that your report brings to light three significant points. First of all, European citizens, without great differences among countries, believe that the main root cause of the industrial crisis and competitiveness in Europe is not due to external factors, but rather to internal ones, because of the EU. So our problem is not China, also because we can't decide on behalf of the Chinese government. Our problem is not the US, also because it's American citizens who elected President Trump, and if you're not an American citizen, you don't get to vote. Our problem is Europe. And Europe has to decide for Europe, also in the light of what other actors are doing. So there is a competitive race. So the first and foremost responsibility is Europe's. Secondly, the Chinese. Yes, they've got a big part to play. But Europe is the one who has to decide, and as quickly as the other big groups, so China and the US. The second big point to emerge from the polling is this cross-reference results. They're all the same across the board, even with some variations between some people whom identify as being more of the Green Party voters or ECR voters. But if you look closely at all the results, the answers were the same across the board. So it's not an ideological issue, and so it is wrong to look at solutions from an ideological point of view. That's what our electorate is telling us. We have to look at it from a social point of view, and this is what comes out from the answers of people belonging to different political groups. And the third point is the need for technological neutrality. Some countries privilege the hybrid, others privilege electric, others, yet again, biofuels. But overall, it is quite apparent that our electorate, our voters, would like for us to face this challenge in complete freedom, as has always been, which is basically what underlines Europe. First, when we had the coal and steel community, and then the EC, because it was always a huge difference. We were for freedom of choice, and the then Soviet bloc had imposed solutions. So we must let citizens and industry and the market choose what technology we should use to face the environmental challenges. So these 3 points clearly come out of this poll. So the first responsibility, the first fault is Europe's. It is not a political issue, but it's a cultural, social, economic question, and it must be faced in a full neutrality of technology. And this is what our documents are based upon. I said this to the commissioners I met with today. I will do it with the following ones. And we've produced 2 documents, 2 non-papers, to revise and review the European industrial competitiveness. So first of all, we need simplification. And this was done with the Netherlands because we absolutely need simplification, especially for SMEs. Then there is the non-paper on cars, written with the Czech Republic, and I will talk briefly about it. Third is the CBAM revision, CBAM mechanism review with Poland and others who came on board later. Then there's one on the chemical sector, which we're about to submit together with France. Fifthly, there's one on the revision of the support system for microchips, again with the Netherlands, to be submitted. And then space policy, together with Germany. Why am I talking about these 6 strategic non-papers? Because we believe that revision has to be complete, but also because given what we're working on with other countries on these strategic non-papers, it shows that we want to work with other countries irrespective of what kind of governments they have to get to reach the same goal. So sometimes we work with Germany or with France or the Netherlands or Poland. And this just goes to show that we want to work to realize goals that are shared with other governments. Now, coming in more specifically on the car non-paper, which we started with the Czech Republic and then 5 other important EU countries joined in, and then 8 more supporting it. So 15 EU countries at the first Competitiveness Council expressed their support. It sort of highlights how important it is. And also we have the support of the industrial sector and the trade unions. So in the trilateral Germany, France, Italy non-paper, in the Paris meeting, and the European Automobile Industry Association, as well as the European Small and Medium Enterprise Association, have also written a paper that supports our conclusions, and the same goes for the trade unions in the automobiles sector. And on the 5th of February, they're actually organizing a demonstration in Brussels. It's important to note that other governments who haven't co-signed our document, for example, Chancellor Scholz's letter sent to President von der Leyen, and other documents that are going around European capitals, also support our non-paper. So what does our non-paper say? Well, following common sense, it says that we have to examine the situation in all its aspects, maintaining the 2035 deadline. Our non-paper is not an ideological banner. It is a reform proposal supported by the majority of countries. So we would like to keep the 2035 target, but let's give ourselves all the tools and all the alternatives to reach it. So we have to remove the obstacle of fines that is about to be denounced in the worst possible way, both in the Italian government and in the Competitiveness Council. Because it's actually these fines ultimately go to finance the car manufacturers outside of Europe. So it's a perfect storm. So to avoid paying fines in Europe, European manufacturers have to basically subsidize their non-European rivals. So we have to review the fine mechanism. We have to see how to support our European companies in a homogeneous and sustainable way, because it's the only way to create a sustainable European car market, avoiding the sort of hyped and falsified climate that we had with all these incentives, which have skewed the market and deprived it of clarity. The industry needs to be able to program its strategy, and to do that, it needs to clearly know what there is, and this has to be done by using complete technological neutrality, so that we're able to use every and all technology that we have available. Now, this is also what Trump said yesterday when he ended the American Green Deal, and we have to review the European Green Deal if we want to be able to compete with other industrial powerhouses and keep the social model of our continent. Now, unfortunately, I have to leave you, because I have to meet with President Metsola and then go back to Italy. But thank you for this meeting, but also for the activity that you've been carrying out since the last term, for opening a window to the future of our Europe with foresight, which today is easy to say, but a few months or years ago seemed absolute madness, but actually it was common sense. Thank you to Minister Urso, who has to leave us. Thank you for all you've done these months that will have to bring results, also thanks to us. I would invite the colleagues Alexandra Vonda, Robert Zile, Elena Dolazan, and Pietro Fiocchi to come to the podium with your nameplates.
Sì, sì. Mettiamo Vondra qui in mezzo. Sì, ti accomodi. Sì, grazie. Chi arriva? Sì, mettiamo Vondra qui. Sasha. Ok. Yeah. Dove vuoi, Pietro? Di là. Bene, proseguiamo con...
Okay, moving on with our work. To highlight the work that our group has been doing on this subject for the last few weeks. We have been exchanging drafts of this resolution because we would like it to be voted on eventually. As we said at the beginning, it's important and urgent to send a strong signal. We've brought a few of our MEPs here today, some of those who are working more directly on the subject, And I'd like to begin with Alexandra Vondra, who is our coordinator in the ENVI committee and who is coordinating the work on the resolution. Sasha.
Yeah, hello everybody, thank you very much. So I cannot speak Italian, which is a dominating language here, so you have to accept my English, but I want to thank Italy. First of all, this is a great work. I think this event as such is perhaps the most important event what ECR has organized in this term. So, and it's very valuable, and we should work with that. We should make this available, you know, to Germans, to the French, because what is really interesting that dominating throughout Europe is a normal, standard, ordinary wisdom of ordinary people, which is in sharp contrast with the social and green engineers in the Commission, including the current one, because, for example, Wubke Hekstra, who is responsible, he still did not understand where we are. And not speaking about those who authorize this current legislation we want to change. You know, Franz Timmermans, Diederik Samson, who's chief of cabinet, was for 10 years, he was the leader of this, you know, green NGO, what is the most famous green NGO. So, you know, those people were shaping the legislation. And the result is that the price of the cars are skyrocketing high. The industry is collapsing. And we need to change this. So my second thanks goes to Italian government, because your minister has already mentioned that there is a Czech-Italian initiative in the council. So your minister, our minister, Martin Kupka, they elaborated in the fall the common paper, distributed in the council, generating, I would say, a lot of support. And now we have to move also in the European Parliament. So, you know, everybody is watching what's happening in the United States, including, you know, the decision of Donald Trump on the automotive sector, because, you know, they want to save the industry too. There is some price for this, because originally, you know, Antonio Giordano, the Secretary General of ECR, another Italian, when we had this annual dinner in December, has asked me, Sasha, you should go to inauguration too. I said, no, I have to be here in the European Parliament. We have a plenary in Strasbourg, and we should vote on the resolution on the automotive industry. Because, you know, I prefer to work, to work for the people more than for the social media. But we have to postpone this because of two things. And maybe, I don't know, you know, I was a bit late because I had a speech in the plenary now. But EPP has decided still to maneuver because of the German elections. I do not understand why, but that's their decision. And then Patriots, you know, they were making to go there to make their photo op to Washington, so we would not even have votes. So we'll do it next time, I hopefully. We are ready. You know, this is the draft of the resolution, which we would start to discuss with EPP, because they have their own text too, and the others as well. And this proposal, which has been originally elaborated by myself and Ondřej Krutílek, who is my Czech colleague in the ECR, and then with the help and engagement of the Italians and Poles and the others. So we do have it. And what are the main points for this? First, you know, there is an urgent need to do, and that's the issue of the penalties. The penalties, you know, according to the current legislation, which the companies, the automotive sector should pay from the January of this year, if we will not somehow modify the legislation, would take them, you know, from the industry about 16 billion euros. The money which they could invest into the innovation, they should pay on the penalties to the EU. That's a nonsense. So we have a solution, at least, I would prefer to abolish this totally. But of course, this compromise is always the solution here. So at least, to distribute this into much, much longer time that they would have survived this. Second, no less important is the revision of the ban on the combustion engine in 2035. I think that this ban, it's against the market, it's against the people, as we could see. It's against even my wishes, so I purchased my last combustion engine just as a price for my victory in the elections. So I have a new one here in the garage. And, it's impossible to travel with electromobile from Prague to Strasbourg. There is not any direct flight. So I need to be here on time. And, with electromobile, one of the Czech colleague from EPP is using electromobile. He has a maximum speed, to be affected 105 kilometers per hour. And if I would drive 105, I would start to sleep immediately and would kill myself. So, we need to re-evaluate this, and the road ahead is to speed up the review, which was planned for 2026. So we want to speed up this 2025 and press the Commission to re-evaluate this complete ban and to select the role, to choose the role of the technological neutrality. So biofuels, hydrogen, other e-fuels, of course, because that could be the future too. So this is the second important aspect of this draft resolution. Then there are some other issues at stake, like infrastructure. There is not enough infrastructure, so and then also reducing dependency and support for the industry, because and that's my last sentence to pass this to the others. The impact of transportation, in particular the personal transportation, on the climate, on the carbon balance in global scene is rather marginal. But automotive industry is a very important pillar of our economy. For my country, it's 10% of GDP, and it's 12–13% of working labor force. And it's not easy, because in my district town, the very first company is already shutting down, so 1,000 people in a city which has the same number of inhabitants like in Greenland, about 50,000 people. So it's a political problem. So, we should really approach the balance between economy, environment, and social affairs. This is, the golden triangle of the sustainable development. And to say goodbye to this green social ideology, which is swimming in some greens, but in the reality makes Europe as a periphery of the world. And this is something what I for sure do not wish for this continent, which is always a pillar of the economic, of the global economics, and we must remain so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Sasha. We have a reshape of our agenda. So first of all, we have to give the floor to Nicola Procaccini, who is a commitment right now, and then Robert Zile, then Pietro, and at the end, Elena Donalzan will make the conclusions. Nicola Procaccini.
Thank you, Carlo. I do apologize because I was supposed to be wrapping up this session, which is designed to present our survey, but I have to meet the president of the EPP, so unfortunately I won't be able to stay. I will, of course, in my meeting with the president of the EPP, repeat what I've said before, that this is the most important current topic. The crisis in the automotive sector is the big issue. The biggest that we're facing now as the European Union, alongside the crisis in the shipping sector and the parallel crisis of the aviation sector, in which European legislation and red tape over the last 5 years has produced distortions to competitiveness, which are dramatic. This distortion was very clearly explained by Minister Urso, but I would like to add a point that I found out about yesterday when I met with the car dealerships. They have to sell a certain percentage of electric vehicles from the manufacturers. So in order not to be given a fine, dealerships have to stick to manufacturers' prices, and they're not allowed to sell from other manufacturers so as not to distort the percentages. So there's an incentive to not sell cars. It's incredible. It's quite amazing what Franz Timmermans and co. Managed to get on the books in the last legislative period. We, of course, foresaw this. We criticized it, but we were described as deniers. We were taken as climate deniers, and I'd like to welcome the guest who's just arrived. And we were silenced. We've brought this up on several occasions, and I would remind you of the letter that Mr. Vondra and others wrote. We've asked for this to be discussed in plenary, and we were told, no, we'll do it at the first Strasbourg plenary of the new year, which is this one. And then we were told, well, we can't do it now, so we're going to put it off. For the reason that's been mentioned so many times before, because of the elections. How can elections prevent the European Union, through its parliament, deals with such an important issue? I really don't understand or accept that. But that's the reality we're faced with. Throughout this, the ECR's position has been extremely pragmatic. And I'm very pleased to see in this survey that the opposition is not the usual conflict left-right. We see that even amongst the left, even amongst the Greens, there is a rejection of the European rule on the automotive sector. The true opposition is between common sense and irrationality. This is what we want to contribute to the debate. common sense. Common sense would dictate that we shouldn't focus just on the 2035 deadline. Because right now, it seems more urgent to focus on the more immediate results. In other words, working on the fines which are being slapped on European manufacturers and on the principle of technological neutrality, which means that sustainable fuels can be used that will allow for the survival of the internal combustion engine. As I was saying, our approach is very pragmatic. We think that the response from the left-wing groups to this crisis is quite mad. First of all, they denied there was a crisis. Today, they can't avoid talking about it, but their response is quite astonishing. Their response is to create a European fund fed into by a common European debt in order to incentivize the purchase of electric vehicles. Well, I'm an Italian MEP, and as I'm sure you know, we're not traditionally hawkish on European budgets, but even we consider that it is absurd that beyond the debts that we've incurred for the post-COVID recovery, beyond the debts that we've accumulated to rearm, that we would add another common debt to correct a tragic mistake made by European policymakers. It's a bit like the your economic principle in which people are paid to dig holes and other people are paid to fill those holes in, thereby trying to keep an economic system in balance. I mean, it's not in balance, it would collapse. Only someone with a communist heritage would think that that kind of economy could stay on track. So I think we need to stay firm. We think this is the main issue that we need to focus on today, alongside, of course, energy in a broader sense. And as such, we will continue through our MEPs, through our initiatives, to defend this from the attack on it from the forces of irrationality. I do apologize that I have to leave now.
Thank you, Nicola. Now the floor immediately to Robert Zile, our coordinator in the Trump Committee and naturally our Vice President of the Parliament.
Yes, thank you, Carlo, and thank you, colleagues, for this very interesting event. First of all, for this polling, it's really good arguments on political level. We can use it. It's well done. I am very impressed by Mr. Urso, your minister. So actually what he organized currently as being industry minister in Italy, he is doing such bilateral and trilateral with the several member state responsible persons to find the partners and to go ahead. I think it's absolutely right political approach. In European Parliament, thank you, Sasha, for this drafting of this resolution. I think we can wait, better to wait and to get better results and just to go ahead and to lose. It would be the absolutely right political tactics. On the substance of this issue, automotive industry, what I can say, so it's definitely when we created, unfortunately, during the last 5 years, so all this Green Deal and also related to automotive industry, we always use more stick and less carrot, because stick is cheap. You don't need it. So carrot is you need the resources. So, and that's why we put the deadlines and put the different penalties which should be removed urgently. I fully agree. So I think we have to fight with this approach in the general to succeed on this automotive industry, and maybe not only in automotive industry, but all related to Green Deal, to not to allow to use so much stick. Stick mean deadline. For example, internal combustion engine ban for 2035. I think we have to show with this movement through the resolution, through the next steps. We have to push the pressure to the Commission to make impact study, what kind of causes it will create, the technological neutrality, ban for 2035, what will happen. And then we can press and to find some, during a few years' time, maybe some good arguments that we have to revise this decision. And it's politically absolutely, to my opinion, important, because most of the people, also polling shows, people have heard about 2035. They don't know all the details, but this everybody understands. So, and if we reach this goal to make a revision for 2035 with something else, cannot formulate today what would be this something else approach, and where we can get a majority political on council side and also in parliament, but I think that would be really a success. Then people will trust that we can create a common sense in automotive industry. So let's try to do it. It will be not easy, not slowly, not very fast. So with penalties, I hope it would be fast, but all the rest we have to be patient. At the same time, very target-oriented politicians, and our ECR group can succeed, I think, in this. Well, thank you very much. So.
Thank you, Robert. We are all full of commitments, Thank you so much. And now, la parola a...
Now let me give the floor to Pietro Fiocchi, who is the Vice Chair of the Environmental Committee. And since the Timmermans era, we've been following this issue closely. Pietro Fiocchi, please.
Highly professional translator, I switched to Italian. Allora,
well, the presence of the minister was very important because it really shows that the Italian government is on our side in this important battle. Not only, but we also have the Czech government on side, from what I've understood. I'll concentrate on 2 points. Firstly, the pragmatic and technical approach to the environmental issue. We really do want to save the environment. We don't want to just dream. We really want to do something practical. And the other one is a strategic plan for Europe. We want Europe to return to being at the center of the planet and not just a peripheral area of old rich people. Now, regarding the environment, let's go 100% electric in transport, but we're not 100% renewable. We still have power plants with smokestacks. So either we get nuclear power plants online in order to get 100% electric transport, or we'll just have to leave it. I'm laughing at the protests against wind farms in the Marche region of Italy because apparently it was too visible. So if you're not happy with a wind farm, imagine what you would think about a nuclear power plant. So I could stop here, but I will continue. If we want 100% electric mobility, imagine that we're perfect on the production of renewable energy. Who is going to pay for the reconstruction of the electric grid? There are hundreds of small producers for solar farms and recharging farms, and that would really lead to collapse, not just in Italy, but in Germany, Poland, Spain. Well, no, France is doing well. If we can't push these ideas further than our European borders, then nothing will happen. So let's make a huge effort. We are going to have to use the gospel of technological neutrality, full stop. And we have to let the market take us in the right direction. The money that we wanted to have to buy electric vehicles, why don't we try to scrap the Euro 1, 2 and 3 that have only reduced emissions 40% in 3 years? That gets much better result. Let's use hydrogen. Let's use biofuels. Let's use all the tools we have. Strategy. The strategy is very simple. Unfortunately, Europe depends on all of us. If we want 100% electric mobility, where are we going to get these high-tech batteries from? China. Lithium, cobalt, from China or from African mines controlled by China. Where are we going to get the microchips from? From China, Taiwan and South Korea. If China invades Taiwan, well, we won't get any toasters. Let's forget about electric vehicles. Another important point from a data point of view, of the 15 EVs sold, biggest EVs sold in the world, only one comes from Europe. That's 1 in 15. We could compete on cost with India and China. They don't care about our environmental and social standards. Well, we can't, because our cost is 25% higher than those countries. So we are losing right from the beginning for trying to do the right thing. We need to bring technology back here. We need to bring intellectual property back to Europe. That's the only way that we're going to be able to make progress. There are another series of arguments, but I see that everybody's gotten bored and is leaving the room. No, but really, we have to make an effort in Europe to start to recycle lithium rather than sending it away. Recycle nickel and cobalt. We need to produce microchips and do a series of things so that we can become independent from countries that are hard to control and could hold us to ransom whenever they want. When we're fully independent and autonomous, then we can start to think about being at the center of the planet again. Thank you.
Allora, grazie al collega Pietro Fiocchi. Hanno dato...
Thank you, Pietro Fiocchi. Now they've passed the baton over to me, and then we will have conclusions by our co-chair, Yaki. But I'm going to talk about our position today. That is to say, all the figures support a revision. Data from industry, from supply chain, from the loss of value, from market, from consumer choices, and industrial difficulties. So the poll is actually good, because when you talk with democratically elected governments, when you talk with colleagues, when you face the issue from a pragmatic point of view, you need figures to support it, and you need empathy with European citizens. So this meeting that the ECR organized is fundamental, because we're just echoing data that is already known, but we have to also divulge it. And so in this plenary, when we should have been able to vote on resolutions, at least the first, the one written by Vondran, which is the most articulate one, we should put the spotlight on this, because obviously also the non-paper that the EPP wrote in December, when you read it, because we always read it when we get papers, in some points is even more critical than our resolution. So we should be able to use this to go back to what we almost managed to do at the end of the last mandate. That we managed to get the council and works councils on board with our position. So it's not an ideological one, it's a pragmatical one, and this just illustrates it. And let me go back to what Sayaki was saying and talk about something that pertains to the ITRE committee, where I'm a VP. There's also the issue of heavy transport. Europe is mainly mobile on rubber, as heavy transport shows, and heavy lorries cannot be changed into electric because you don't get enough traction. And transport of heavy goods on heavy lorries is important for Europe, so we have to face it. Now, we also have to review all the penalty system. It's not wrong to impose penalty if you don't do what you're supposed to do. We have to see how the model is. And then the automotive industry in Europe is very, very important, as a lot of documents say, but we have two more issues today to see. Socially, you can't have mobility. You can't have a European mobility without cars. Of course, part of the population can afford to live in the center of Dublin or Paris, but a lot of people live in mountainous areas, in rural areas, in the outskirts of cities, and without cars you don't get mobility for citizens. And then you have the issue of sovereignty, which we today call independence or self-sufficiency. Pietro, as well as Minister Urso, have highlighted that it has to do with our ability to produce without ignoring such a rich industrial chain as the automobile industry. Because it's a very rich and articulated chain of production. So we have to review the penalty mechanism. The figures show this. The public opinion on the part of the population shows it. So it's a good thing that citizens are still paying attention and they're not being brainwashed by the Timmermans and Co. nonsense. And then there's this fundamental principle of technological neutrality. We must be free to choose, which is why, with Mr. Vonda, we have underlined some of the aspects that are important for us. We wanted to put in technological neutrality, biofuels, and then leave up to the single member states and their government to focus on what they do best. Because the only way to avoid industrial desertification is doing this. Thank you.
Jackie, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this invitation and fantastic initiative. Automotive sector, it has been a diamond in European corona since decades, since I remember. Especially Italian's company, automotive company, are the companies which is well recognized in whole world. And this is something, and this is a value. We should fight for this. And with this green madness, they destroy sector, automotive sector and European competitiveness. And because of what? Because of carbon emission. You know that during last decades, with our efforts, the carbon emission globally were increased. So outcome of those efforts are exactly nothing, zero. But the outcome of the economy is like you see, that automotive sector has lots of issues. And only our group, and this is what I would like to thank to you, have a competitive solution, complex solution. First, survey. Thank you for this. This is the complex approach. Then resolution, then pressure. And I would like to thank you for building this kind of debate, building this coalition, and with you, my dear friends, there is a big chance that we can change something in Europe. For all of citizens which share and value reason, because this is about the reason and this is about our style of life. So thank you so much once again for this fantastic work, for your effort, for this meeting, and I keep my fingers crossed for you. Thank you.
Volevo informarvi che l'evento sulla famiglia è in questa sala alle 15 fra poco.